wish everyone who celebrates the holiday a very good Friday, very good Friday. We have an open house this Sunday, Easter Sunday, which I'm excited about. It's our first Easter egg roll, 12:30. You're all invited, and I hope many people come. Also, after the Brussels tragedy, all the victims are in our thoughts and prayers, and especially the New Yorkers. It's a terrible tragedy. That it had to happen this week is even worse. So again, we'll remember them in our thoughts and prayers. I'm going to go enjoy Good Friday with my 3 daughters who are all coming in from school, which is a special treat. You'll see when you get as old as I am, it doesn't happen often, and when they're all together, you want to be there. And then I'll be coming back up tomorrow. I do the car show, and then I'll be coming up tomorrow. We've been having good conversations on the budgets, and the conversations are ongoing. There's nothing dramatically new. I think the process is orderly. For those of you who remember the old budget process, this is markedly different. But it's an orderly process. It's organized. The conversations are good. The issues are complicated. Minimum wage is complicated. You want to pay workers a fair wage. You also want to make sure that the economy and all the economic work that we've done and the economic growth that we've achieved isn't endangered. So there's a balance on that issue. We're working through paid family leave, education aid, et cetera. All the issues. There's nothing new or exciting. We did have a conversation with the Senate that raised, in light of Brussels, addressing the issue of terrorism in this state, and that's a good idea. Terrorism is not getting any better. It's getting worse. I believe it's another new normal, like climate change, and New York, no doubt, is one of the prime targets. And this is happening with more and more frequency. So whatever we can do to increase our capacity, our sophistication, we would do. So we're talking about that also.
What are you talking about regarding that?
We're talking about a number of initiatives, generally security-related, more sharing of information, better use of the state police. Because look, you look at the world is changing so fast, it's almost amazing, right? We started with extreme weather, and we had to put together an entirely different operation in this state for extreme weather. The old emergency management operation just did not work for what we're dealing with. It was just designed for a different time. Likewise, this constant threat of terrorism, where it's not once every 10 years, it's not once every 5 years, it's almost once every 5 weeks now. This means you're in a constant state of preparedness. And rather than declaring these emergency states and different alert statuses, deal with the reality that you have to be on high alert all the time. And that then is a different protocol for the state, different staffing pattern, et cetera. So,
does this mean more troopers, or does it mean
we're talking about
closing the terror loophole?
We're talking about a number of things, and those are all in conversation. But that's probably the only new topic that came up, because literally it was spurred by the Brussels situation. Otherwise, it's the same issues that we've been talking about.
On the minimum wage, you began the week by alluding that there might be a modification for agricultural workers. Initially, the Farm Bureau said, geez, that's great, thanks a lot. More recently, they said, how can we be treated any differently? That's going to put us at a disadvantage. Could you offer some more detail about what exactly you might be thinking of and whether or not there's any movement on that?
In case it was just that, first, in general, we have spent a tremendous amount of time over the past few years focusing on the economy, as you know, focusing specifically on the upstate economy, which has lagged for decades. And I'm proud that I'm the governor who has spent more time and more resources on upstate New York than any governor probably in history, frankly. And you see the results, right? We talk about Western New York all the time. We now have a state unemployment rate which is down to 4.8, which is down below the national average. And that's basically since 2007. So this is a very big deal, the progress we made. We want to make sure that we don't do anything that could hinder that in any way. One of the industries that sent up a flare early on, and which has always been understood to be problematic, is the agricultural industry. And we've talked about farm workers for many years and trying to make reforms to farm worker programs. So that is an industry that we've been talking to about it. We have a number of ideas and approaches to make sure it doesn't hurt the agriculture industry. It's a big part of this state's economy. I'm concerned about it. I had a proposal to reduce all tolls for all agricultural vehicles on the thruway. So I started with a recognition that they need help, but we haven't concluded on any set program yet.
Governor, I still imagine this is a $15 wage statewide, regardless of phase-ins, regardless of carve-outs. Will this be $15 upstate, downstate?
My proposal is $15 upstate, downstate. My proposal has different phase-in times by design because you have different economies in this state. We talk about 10 different regional economies. There are at least 2 major differences, right, downstate, upstate. So my proposal gets to 15 phased in differently between downstate and upstate, which I think is just the economic reality of the situation. Now, you can have more nuances. You can say Long Island is a separate region. That's part of the conversation. But it's 15 calibrated to the economy in that area.
Would you support it being 13 upstate or over a longer period of time rather than 2021,
I support my
2023?
proposal.
Governor, on paid family leave, are there any conversations about having
You know
carve-outs
better than
for,
that, Joe.
or carve-outs for agriculture or different sorts of industries?
We chatted about the particular problems about the agricultural industry, and that's an industry that I understand full well. The financial difficulties when you talk about farm workers and the minimum wage, and we're talking to them and looking for ways to make sure that if there's a negative impact, we correct for it.
But for paid family leave, is there any sort of conversation about carve-out?
Paid
on
family leave is a very important proposal. Would make a dramatic difference in people's lives. I'm very excited about it. We're having good conversations. Again, there's different points of view on paid family leave. When should it start? What's the contribution? What's the benefit? And we're talking through all of that.
Are you still looking to shift, or not even shift, but have the city pick up the extra Medicaid costs over the, right now the state picks it up? Is that still on the table?
What I need to do as a manager is to get the bureaucracy to function efficiently and effectively, and to try to save money. I was told for decades you couldn't save any money in Medicaid. That's what it was, and you had to do it. My first year I said, oh yeah? Well then we're going to cut the Medicaid budget. And everybody said, oh, you can't cut the Medicaid budget. The world will stop spinning on its axis. I said, we're going to cut the Medicaid budget. No, you can't do it. Well, you better come to the table and find savings. Otherwise, we're going to cut the Medicaid budget. And you know what happened? They came to the table, we found savings. We actually served more people for less money. There's a lot of fat in the bureaucracy. There is a lot of waste. We're running our state agencies basically below zero for multiple years. Hold it a second. So now go look at the other 2 really big bureaucracies, CUNY and SUNY. Go look at those salary structures. Look at the administrative overhead. And I've been talking about this for years, Ken. We have to change, we have to find savings. They don't do it. Why? Because it's their bureaucracy, and they're protective of their bureaucracy. So unless you say, unless there's an if you don't find the savings, then X, they won't do it. And that's what this year is about. We need savings in Medicaid, in CUNY, and SUNY, and not just we need savings. it's wrong to run wasteful bureaucracies. That's somebody's money. Tax dollars, some people think, well, that's nobody's money, it's just tax money. No, that's somebody's money. Every dollar is somebody's money. That's how I think of it. And when you look at the waste in these bureaucracies, it's unconscionable. And it's why people feel bad about paying taxes, et cetera. So we need savings. It's a constant ongoing process. And we have a proposed mechanism in place that will find them.
But on the Medicaid part of it, with the city, is that still on the table, or have they found the savings you were looking for?
We are looking for savings. We're looking for savings literally as an ongoing process.
So it's still on the table then,
Yeah.
the having them pick it up?
No, I believe we will find the savings. People just have to be willing to find the savings, right? That is the lesson to me from Medicaid 1.
So you don't think the city
MRT.
will pick up the extra costs? You think the savings will be found?
I believe, as I've said multiple times, I believe we have a mechanism to find the savings at CUNY and SUNY and New York City Medicaid.
What about the wage bump for the nonprofits, Governor, within Medicaid?
If there is, I don't think because you raise the minimum wage, everybody automatically gets a raise, right? We've raised the minimum wage twice in the past couple of years. And we didn't increase the contracts. Now, if there's a hardship situation, and some of our contracts are basically a cost plus, that's different. But it's never been that every contract automatically goes up because of minimum wage. Workers get raises, right? So that's an operating cost for business.
You think the assembly is
resolution
200?
on the
Now,
transportation?
this is a higher, to the extent that this would be a high increase in minimum wage, then I understand it.
All right, guys. Has there been any resolution on the push for parity and upstate, downstate transportation funding?
Yes, what do you mean by parity, Nick? What is the definition of parity?
Well, how do you define parity?
No, you use the word, and I'm just wondering, when you ask me the question, what is the definition of that word?
A number of business groups that are pushing for comparative funding between MTA, the MTA capital plan,
Comparative?
and DOT capital plan.
Comparative?
Penny for penny, same dollar amount,
Same dollar amount between where and where?
upstate and downstate,
Bronx North? Is that upstate?
the whole state, every city.
Well, that's...
Attack the new guy, that's
Yeah,
cool.
that's exactly right. That's the question. Will there be fairness? Yes. The word they use is parity. But, you know, parity, how do you want to say, what's your definition of parity? That 60% of the people get as much as 30% of the people? Is that parity? But will it be a fair transportation program to all? Yes, it will be a fair transportation program to all. Upstate New York, you have more of a need for roads and bridges, water infrastructure. Downstate, it's more about the MTA, mass transit. We have a very robust MTA plan on the table, but it will be fair to upstate New York.
All right, thanks a lot, Bo. I just want to ask you about SUNY, the tuition increases. You supported the SUNY 2020, another 5 year of that. The legislature's saying a 2-year tuition freeze. Now SUNY's saying we'll do a 1-year tuition freeze if you give us $72 million.
Yeah, look, my proposal was continue the rational tuition. Rational tuition was started because you had the legislature approving the tuition increases. So it was very herky-jerky. It was very hard to plan. The legislature didn't like to do tuition increases, so you would go multiple years without a tuition increase. SUNY would basically be broke, and then all of a sudden the legislature would do a big increase, which would knock the students on their tuchus because now they had this big increase all at once. We said be rational tuition. Make it predictable, schedule it, let people know. It worked very well, I believe. It has to be renewed, and lo and behold, there's political opposition to the renewal.
But the criticism is, you know, now we're 5 years out, $300 a year. Now you're up $1,500. It's 30% more than it was 5 years ago. Enough with the tuition increases. people are saying.
Triple the inflation rate.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right, and that is their point, and it's an election year, and they don't want to renew the rational tuition. I understand their political point of view. I understand the predictability point of view on the other side. So we have different proposals, and we'll see how we work.
Governor, from your perspective, though, is a tuition freeze unsupportable? From your perspective,
Is a tuition freeze unsupportable?
this year?
When you say unsupportable, do you
From
mean?
your viewpoint, is it not, the state can't sustain a tuition freeze this year?
Well, the budget is all about priorities, right? You can fund whatever you want to fund. It's a question of priorities. What do you want to fund first? The other question is, does SUNY need this increase this year after they had 300 for the preceding years? SUNY also said, just pass it, but we won't raise the tuition the first year, which would suggest they didn't need the funding, right? I don't think that helped their case, because if they said pass it, but we won't impose the tuition increase, they're basically admitting they didn't need the tuition increase this year. So I think that was a relevant
Thanks
factor.
a lot, folks. We're out of here.
Governor, Jacob named Seth Agata as its executive director. He's the third executive director of JCOPE to be derived from your top staffers. Is there an optical problem there for an ostensibly independent investigative body?
Yeah, to say he was derived from my top staffers would be a little disingenuous, right?
Well, he was what, deputy counsel to you?
What else was he?
He was deputy counsel, he was the head of GOER, correct?
He was acting counsel.
What else was he?
He's testing you, Casey, I
Oh,
like
boy.
it.
Can I drop back to Ellen Biden and TC tell you better?
He worked for the legislature for many,
All
many
these
years.
people have had jobs before, but their most
All right.
recent jobs.
So
were
he
in
is a very experienced, well, when you say worked just for the governor,
I never said that.
yeah. When you don't say he also worked for the legislature, right?
Well, okay.
It's a little,
Okay,
right?
but to
If
my
I
point-
did that, you'd say it'd be deceiving. He has significant governmental experience in Albany, in the executive and the legislative. He's a truly experienced, qualified government professional with a great reputation on both sides of the aisle, in both houses and both branches, right?
All right, thanks a lot.
Did members
So-
of the administration make outreach to vouch for him?
No,
with Jacob?
you should speak to Jacob about why they made the selection, but just, you can't to suggest that this is not a highly qualified individual
That's
would
not
be
what
to
I
do
said.
him a disservice.
That's
Or
not
to
what I said.
suggest that his only experience was working for the governor.
I didn't suggest that either.
Well, I read your article.
Governor, do
All right,
you,
thanks,
do you
guys.
plan to
Thank
issue
you.
messages of necessity on the budget?
You know, you don't plan to do that, and I have used far and away fewer messages of necessity than past governors. But, you know, that's the word, necessity. If it was a necessity, would I do it? Yeah, but it'd have to really be a necessity. I don't like to do it. I don't do it often. Again, my use has been infrequent compared to the past. But if it was a necessity, and it depends on the circumstances. If it's an item that's been out there and discussed, and it's a process issue more than anything, then I'm more likely to do it. But I don't have any plans for a message of necessity, but never say never.
Governor, you mentioned Upstate's revival. The Empire Center this week put out a report basically disputing it, saying that the pace of out-migration has increased under your administration.
Who's the Empire Center?
You know, it's E.J. McMahon and
Oh,
it's a
who's
good-
E.J. McMahon?
Okay, it's not a quiz, I'm asking you.
I haven't seen the report. Thank you, guys.
Everybody, take care. Take care. Take care, everybody.